Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Annalisa and I am in my new room for the first video I'm filming here book-wise. That was succinct, wasn't it? There's going to be a moving vlog sometime soon. I don't know when it's coming out because I've got a lot of videos I want to make promptly and there's not enough time. First of all, I want to let you know that the next 2 weeks between the 1st and 15th of December, I'll be taking part in the Snowathon. The details will be linked below if you want to also take part, but I'm going to be making a video at the end of each week of it for that, and then I also want to make art videos, and so there's gonna be a lot coming at you during December. Hopefully you'll enjoy it. But right now I'm doing my November wrap up. I read 8 books this month. Let's get the one that I read at the very first part of this month and that I don't have in my stack because I had to give it back to my library first so I don't forget. That was Assassin's Apprentice, which which I read as part of a read-along, and I will at some point remember who the read-along was with, and I will put that both here and in the description. I didn't read it for the first month of the readathon, and then I read it in 3 days. So it was a month and a half read-along. But I had to give it back to the library, and I just hadn't gotten around to it in October because I was not feeling the books in October. But anyway, Assassin's Apprentice is a fantasy, but magic definitely takes a backseat in it. I would compare it in that way to the Protector of the Small series in the Tortal universe by Tamora Pierce, in that it is mostly about court intrigue set in a medieval, maybe edging towards, coming towards Renaissance era imaginary kingdom. There are other countries and there's history for it. Very nice world building, I believe, but if you're into fantasy, you're probably familiar with the type of world I'm describing. And in this case, the way that magic takes a back seat is that it is only available to a very small percentage of the population. In fact, it has been restricted to only royalty for I think a few generations at this point, and it is a very sort of limited type of magic. The only thing that you can do with your magic, if you happen to have it, is read a person's mind, communicate with them if you want to, block somebody else out from reading your mind if you want to, and you can also go into somebody's mind without them knowing and screw with it. You can make them believe things that aren't true and give them mental blocks and stuff like that. There is another type of magic that you're just born with, and this is an ability to do similar things but with animals only and not with people. So the storyline of Assassin's Apprentice is about how a illegitimate child of one of the princes of the kingdom this story centers on becomes a assassin's apprentice. Specifically, he becomes the apprentice to the royal assassin, and so throughout the book is both taught about how to be assassin and is also sent on missions for the king. Sometimes these missions are to assassinate, sometimes these are reconnaissance type missions, but I really find that aspect of the story really interesting. I really like stories that are about spycraft. That's one of the reasons I really enjoyed the Trickster's Choice and Trickster's Queen duology that Tamora Pierce wrote. Overall, I remember describing the book right after I finished reading it as a wild ride, because especially the last third of it goes kind of crazy in ways you didn't expect, and just crazy things happen and things get a lot more dramatic than I kind of expected from what had been happening earlier in the book. Content warnings: pet death. That wasn't fun. There's some character death, but none of it hurt my feelings except the pets. That was very upsetting. Something that sometimes doesn't happen in books centering on young people, as this book centers on someone who starts the story at, I believe, 6 years old, and I think he's maybe 15 when it ends, maybe just 14, is there are quite a lot of really good adults in this kid's life. Most of them don't have the control over his life to an extent that they can take care of him very well, because he is kind of officially an orphan, disowned type person, and the only person who can really determine his fate is the king, who is not such a great person. But there are lots of adults around him, such as the master spy he is learning from, and the stable keeper he works with, and various other people in this boy's life who are really good adults who look after him quite well. So I really enjoyed that aspect and that kind of different way of doing things from what some young people's books do. And I'm very much looking forward to continuing the series. Then let's do the one that I think I'm most excited about, although I had a lot of really good reads this month. I think it was mostly because they were based on YouTuber booktuber Rex, and I only picked ones that I was like really excited about, I guess to kind of get me out of my reading slump and get me back into reading, and the people who recommended them to me did a really great job. I got a whole rash of really good recs this month, so I'm gonna link everybody below who recommended these to me. Sorcery of Thorns, I saw all over BookTube, but specifically the first person who talked about it and who really made me interested in it was, I can't remember people's names. Anyway, she's really cool and I like a lot of her book reviews. I'll put her name up there and link below. But she talked about this book quite a while ago in her mid-year freakout tag, and she talked about how there are books that come alive and eat people, and so I was like, yes. And just the other things she said really made me want to read this. I did, and I loved it. First of all, if you like libraries and if you like fantasy where there's a lot of, it's quite heavy magic, as opposed to like Assassin's Apprentice was quite light on the magic, this is very heavy on the magic. There are 4 big main good characters in this book. 3 of them remind me a lot of Howl, Sophie, and Calcifer from Howl's Moving Castle. Maybe I'm crazy because I read that book like 6 or 7 months ago, but the way that the main character, whose name is Elizabeth, interacts with Thorn, who is the love interest, the way they interact reminds me so heavily of Sophie and Howl. Like if it was YA-ified instead of MG. If Sophie, Howl, and Calcifer were turned into YA characters, I feel like it would be these characters. That was so weird, but so enjoyable. And as I really enjoy those 3 characters in Howl's Moving Castle, I really enjoyed these 3 characters. The character who reminds me of Calcifer is named Silas, and he is adorable and I love him. I had all these intelligent thoughts to say when I first finished it, and I was thinking about doing my wrap-up, but that was at the beginning of the month, and now I've forgotten, and all I can remember is how much I liked it. The books that come alive and eat people, they're called grimoires. They don't eat people. They some of them kill you and steal your face and sew it onto their pages. Some of them just kill you because they want to. The reason these books exist is that sorcerers are a thing, and sorcerers have to write down their big spells so that they can be passed down. They can't be passed down apparently through oral tradition for some reason. I guess because they're big secret spells and they don't want and they want to be able to lock them away, which obviously you can't do very well with an oral tradition. The spells have to be written on special magic materials, and specifically to get special magic materials you have to kill creatures like maybe there's a wyvern or sometimes demons, so you'd like skin a magical creature and use that to create the book, or you'd kill people and use their body parts to make the book, and that's how you'd be able to hold this super magical spell. This is all told to you quite early at the beginning of the book, but I really liked how much detail went into the developing of the magic of this world. I think the magic system was really well done, because aside from the magic tomes, there are also sorcerers who use lower level magic books, which are made out of more normal materials that are kind of alive, but not because they have are made of dead people parts. They're just more nicely enchanted. And I really enjoyed the way the sorcerer's magic worked. The librarian element comes in because these magic books that sometimes kill people have to be locked away and taken care of really well, and they have to be preserved so that if the world is ending, some sorcerer can come open this book and figure out how to save it by some very evil means, you know, greater good and all that. But they also have to be locked away for the safety of everyone. I think they're called keepers, the librarians are, and they take care of all the low-level books that are not evil and also all the more evil type books. And our main character is one of these keepers. She is kind of an apprentice one at the moment, and she's looking to move up the ranks because she's really interested, and she really looks up to the director, I believe they're called, of her particular library, which I think there's 6 of. Which brings me to another thing I really liked about this book was all the women in authority. The director of her library is a woman, a cool warrior woman. This sword here with the rubies on it is this lady's sword. Throughout, there are a lot of women in other types of authority positions. Another thing I really like about the main character is that her physical strength is a factor a lot of times. She's physically stronger than her love interest, and she likes to solve problems with brute force, like breaking the handle off a door that you can't find the lock to, and things like that. And that's something you don't see women do in books a lot. And it reminds me of a character from Uprooted who becomes really strong partway through the book, and then she's the strongman character, and I really enjoy women being able to do that. The 4th main character I was talking about is the best friend of the main character from her home library. She is casually mentioned as being a romantic, and Thorn is pretty casually mentioned as being bisexual. I really love this book, and if those sorts of things sound good to you, then I really recommend you check it out. I wouldn't give it huge marks for plot, but in this book I view the plot more as a device for exploring the really cool world and characters rather than something to appreciate by itself. Another book rec I got was from Troy Towell, who's the only booktuber whose name I can never remember. Probably because he's the only, yeah. And that was for the author more specifically than the book, Elizabeth Peters. I think he was specifically talking about the golden one in one of his reviews lately. I'll link it below. But this is part of quite a long series. Let me see. This is how many books the author has written in this long stretch of text here. And there are 14 specifically that are part of this series / are about these characters. And I think this one's quite late in the series, from the way that the sort of recaps are done, where it talks about in the beginning how the different members of the family kind of came to be in the family and different adventures they've had in the past. It sounds like those were adventures that books were written about. So I was kind of dropped in the middle, but this author does a really good job of bringing you up to speed and not making you feel like you're not understanding all these references. She puts in enough information about past adventures that you can understand how they affect the current times, but not so much that you feel like you're getting a lore dump. The main premise of this series is that the main character, Amelia Peabody, is an Egyptologist in the early 1900s. Specifically, this one is during World War I. Specifically, in this case, with the main character and her family, which is made up of her husband, her son, her daughter-in-law, and kind of an adopted niece character who is a relation of some people who work for them. We learn fairly early on that the son of Amelia Peabody, whose name is Ramses, has worked as a spy for England before, and they really like him and think he works well, so want to drag him in again, even though his wife really doesn't like how dangerous it is. As a summary of the plot, kind of, I would say there are 2 main plot directions, and for the first, I think, half of the book, We're following one plot, which is in Egypt. There is a possibility that a new tomb has been found, a new royal tomb with all sorts of really cool artifacts in it and really historically significant stuff. And the main characters really want to get to this tomb, but they've been assigned by the Antiquities Commission of Egypt to go work on some more boring stuff. And so the first part of the book has us hanging out with them while they chip away at that, while also kind of undercover pursuing this mystery of the possibly found royal tomb. And then all of a sudden that plot gets totally interrupted and we're just thrown off onto another plot that has to do with the war. And this is well set up in the beginning with various characters that are coming and going, and it makes sense, but it is a very sudden paradigm shift where if you're somebody who is just there for the Egyptology, you're not going to enjoy that whole section. And it feels very sudden, and I think it's meant to feel that way because it feels sudden to the characters. They're getting ripped out of what they want to do to go do this thing they don't want to do. As suddenly as it starts, that section ends and we get chucked right back into the original plot line of pursuing the royal tomb, and we follow that to its conclusion at the end of the book. But the reason that I really love this, other than that I do find Egyptology really interesting, most of what I know about it being from Stargate, the really good part was definitely the characters and the characters' relationships. Found family is a very heavy influence thing going on here. Most of the characters aren't related, but they consider each other family anyway. There's a lot of adopting going on, and Amelia Peabody and her husband just refer to their son and their daughter-in-law as the children. I like these books so much, I'm talking too much about them and the sun's going. Let's pick this up. The family that are the main characters of this book are aristocratic British people, and they're coming in to be Egyptologists in Egypt, and they run things and they have Egyptians work for them. I think they treat the people who work for them really respectfully, and actually most of the people who work for them they treat like family, but it does feel a little white saviory-ish at some points. But the way that they interact with the Egyptians most of the time adds to the whole found family aspect, and is really enjoyable that way. I definitely want to read all of the other books in this series, so thank you, Troy. Now let's move on to my Beauty and the Beast retellings. I got all of these books from a video by The Wild Book Garden, which I'll link below. I brought this up in my Dragon Prince video, but she talked all about a bunch of underrated Beauty and the Beast retellings, and I just requested as many as I could get, as many as were available at my library. I've got 3 of them. The first one I read was Beastkeeper by Kat Hellison. This is the one that I enjoyed the least, but I am still glad that I read it. It's quite dark, and besides being dark, all the characters are pretty much unhappy the entire time. So it's not an enjoyable book in that way, but it is, I think it was meant as a thought piece, thinking piece on romantic love and how people fall in and out of it. The way the Beauty and the Beast curse works in this story is that once a man from this family falls romantically in love with a woman, he has to stay with that woman and she has to stay with him, or else she will have problems. And if she is with him but not in love with him specifically in that romantic woozy feelings way, he will turn into a beast. Specifically, your pretty standard big cross between a wolf and a bear and a lion thing. And so everybody in this book has that hanging over their heads the entire time. Overall unpleasant, but also really interesting in the way that the magic works. Interesting, I'd say, is the best recommendation. It's 200 pages. The author says it was written all in a flurry and then edited afterwards, which makes sense. I read it all in one sitting. It's that kind of book. Interesting and worth a try if you want something that jumps off the Beauty and the Beast story but is very different. Then I read something that goes a lot along the lines of your standard Beauty and the Beast story, but has some really interesting twists. In this one, the twists are mainly Russian mythology. Specifically, there's stuff about the Firebird, as I believe I also mentioned in that other video, but there's also some other Russian mythology going on. The tagline is "A beauty deadlier than the beast," and the reason for that is that the main female character, the beauty character, is a huntress. She goes out and shoots deer and rabbits and stuff like that and does trapping. That's how she takes care of her family. Her father was one before her, and the thing that brings the Beauty and the Beast character together is that the beauty character's father is out in the woods hunting and dies, and it looks like the beast killed him, so she goes out to try to kill the beast, and the beast is way stronger than her and she can't kill him, at least not in a fair fight, but he needs a hunter or huntress to capture something for him, so he brings her to his castle to try to get her to do that, and through her trying to find a way to kill him and him trying to get her to hunt this thing for him, they learn more about each other and spend time together, and the usual plot ensues. Specifically, I really like that once again they bond over books. The Beast gives her some books that he's taken care of for a long time for her to read, and it's really sweet. This is definitely one in which the curse is very difficult to understand and is very hoo-y, but I really, really liked it. Then we have Of Beast and Beauty, which is a sci-fi version, except it's more like a fantasy version that just has a sci-fi background. The thing about our country house is that there's a train at the back of our property, basically. The sci-fi in this story is basically all in the backstory. There is a dome over the city the beauty character lives in, but it's a magic dome, not a technological dome. I really like this one. I think the world building was done really nicely. The part about it that sci-fi is necessary to is the curse is very heavily involved with these being humans who have come from Earth, presumably, and they've come to a new world and they've reacted badly to this world, and a lot of them live in domes now because of the harsh conditions outside those domes, and there are those called the monstrous, who have been gifted scales and teeth and claws and various other things to help them survive by the spirit of the planet, basically. This is all told to us in kind of fairy tale form in the beginning of the story, which I really like. It's a different sort of way to start a story, and the monstrous and the people inside the domes do not get along at all, and the people in the domes are doing some nasty dark magic to maintain their domes and their richness. And so it's all about a monstrous person and the princess of one of the domes falling in love, and their love is the love that's going to break the curse. As it's kind of shown on the cover, this is a Beauty and the Beast retelling that instead of kicking the whole rose thing to the curb like a lot of them do, this one actually takes the rose and makes it a big intrinsic part of the curse, and so I really like that take on it. And I generally enjoyed social topics that this book looks at, and the relationships between the three main characters being the Beauty character, the Beast character, and Beauty's best friend, Needle. I also read this one for the Dragon Prince mini-thon, but I told you about that already. Then I just finished Great and Terrible Beauty last night, and let me tell you, this was something. I read this because Nicole Pierman really likes it. I wanted to be able to talk to her about it. I would not have kept reading if it hadn't been a big favorite of someone whose taste in books I really respect. It is about a girl, a teenage girl like 16-ish, who is a pretty standard teenager, and she starts out in India, and her family is one of those aristocrats that they sent to India to control things over there, and she comes back to Great Britain when her mother dies and goes to an all-girls boarding school where they are taught to be little subservient wives. It's kind of about teenage girls being teenage girls, and you might remember I don't like teenagers. The YA that I do enjoy is the YA in which the teenagers don't act like teenagers. They either act like middle grade characters or adult characters. And these teenagers very much act like teenagers. You've got the cliques, you've got the hot and cold friendships, all the nastiness that comes with needing to get your approval and socialization and love from other messed up teenagers rather than getting it from your parents like you should. It just results in all sorts of screwed up dynamics. And this book is basically about that, with some witchcraft thrown in. And personally, I found all of the characters' actions to be very realistic, even though I haven't been exposed to schools full of teenagers myself. I have heard from acquaintances of mine. I remember back in high school them talking about their friendships with girls at school, and it was quite similar to a lot of stuff that goes on in this book. And I don't mind a book where I can't identify with the characters or where I wouldn't make the same decisions as them, but a lot of times in this one it's just so annoying how teenager-y they are. Like, none of them ever manage to rise above what's expected of them and their maturity level. They always just go back to you can't expect anything of them except them to be teenagers. I do like some aspects. I like the aspects of protesting against, forced marriage and all that kind of thing, and the depictions of these four main girl characters being, you start out seeing them as one thing, but you learn that there's more to them later on in the book. Anyway, I personally didn't enjoy the magic system. It didn't make a lot of sense. It wasn't really fleshed out, I didn't feel like, but all of these things would have been forgivable, except that the end of the story, spoiler alert, but it involves a suicide, and I feel like it's really not handled well. I feel like it's encouraged not only by, it's one thing if it's encouraged by the characters, but it feels like it's encouraged by the author, and it feels like the author is presenting that as the only way out for this character who's in bad circumstances. And I don't think that's ever a good way for suicide to be handled in a book, because it's never the only way out. And a lot of people who do commit suicide, that's what they think. And I don't think we should be encouraging that. And as someone who has been somewhat suicidal, I really didn't appreciate that. Also, content warnings for self-harm in this book, which might also not have been handled that great. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but I felt like it wasn't addressed as seriously as it should have been. I feel like once you take on that you're going to talk about that topic, you need to do a good job about it, or just not talk about it. But I may very well continue this series because it was so highly recommended, and we'll see if things are handled better in the rest. I did just get it from the library, so I'll just get the rest from the library as well. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!